Supply Chain Talk, the live webinar with no presentations, no PowerPoint, just talk.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever your time zone. Welcome. This is Supply Chain Talk, and I am your host, Kevin Crane, sitting in for Alistair. Welcome to the show. We are here today to talk about actionable insights to innovate in the supply chain. And this is an important topic because according to the recent 2023 Digital Trends in Supply Chain survey from PricewaterhouseCoopers, 83% of executives say that their supply chain technology investments haven't fully delivered the expected results. That's a lot. And I wonder why that is, and why and what more companies can do to elevate their supply chains in the digital age. Organizations working to digitize their supply chains face a number of challenges. According to the PricewaterhouseCoopers study, executives continue to focus on basic near-term priorities and challenges in their supply chain and less on actions and investments that can help transform supply chains and create long-term value. And despite the abundance and potential of technologies to digitize and automate core processes, relatively few executives participating in the research say that their companies are using or planning to use that technology to automate and enhance their supply chain operations over the next 24 months. So what gives? It's a bit of a conundrum, really. Only about 1/3 of executives, for example, say increasing resilience is a top objective when investing in supply chain technology. But 86% agree that their company should invest more in technology to identify, track, and measure supply chain risk. But even with increased buy-in and support from the C-suite and lots of technology available to digitize and innovate in supply chain operations, organizations will face some people challenges as well. And that's perhaps one reason behind the gap between expectations and results. More than 2/3 of executives expect digitizing their supply chain will require some upskilling of employees. But surprisingly, only 7% said digital upskilling was their top priority, even though a lack of digital skills among employees and the availability of digital tools were overwhelmingly the most commonly cited challenges to supply chain innovation. So, what do we do about all of this? What are some best practices and actionable insights to innovate in supply chain operations? How should organizations rethink the importance and priority of supply chain automation and digitization? And what can organizations do to overcome that potential gap between supply chain investment and the expected results? Well, that's what we'll be discussing today with a great panel of guests. But before I introduce our guests today, I do want to say that we want to hear from you too. We'd like to encourage everyone attending today to participate. So if you have a question along the way for one of our guests, please enter that into the Q&A feature. That's where I'll be watching for questions, and I will attempt to get some of them into the flow of the show, and we'll have a few minutes also at the end for your questions. So with all of that said, let's bring on our panel of guests today, starting with Jack Buffington. Jack is a program director and professor of practice at the University of Denver. Jack, are you with us? Hello, Jack. Are you there?
I am.
There you are, Jack. Where are you calling in from? I assume you're calling in from beautiful Denver, Colorado. Is that correct?
That's correct, Kevin.
Nice. I've been to Denver many times. It's a wonderful city and appreciate you being here with us today. Jack is joined by Jose Saiz de Omeneca Monzon. Jose, are you with us? Jose.
Yeah,
there
hello,
you
good
are.
afternoon. Yeah.
Hello, Jose. Welcome back to the program. Jose is an expert in procurement, supply chain, and sustainability, and a member of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. Jose, where are you calling in from?
I'm calling from Madrid, and nice to be here again.
Madrid, a place I have not been yet, though, but it is on my list to visit. So welcome aboard, Jose. It's great to have you with us again today. Next with us is Mahmoud Abu Hajia, Senior Manager of Supply Chain and Efficiency at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Mahmoud, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you, Mahmoud. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
All right, Riyadh, all the way across the world. Welcome aboard. It's great to have you with us from Saudi Arabia. And finally, Blaine Eberhart. Blaine, are you with us?
I am.
Hello, Blaine. Blaine is a senior sales and go-to-market leader for hospitality, retail, and real estate for Amazon Business. Blaine, where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas. Portland, Oregon's sister city, if you will. Keep Portland and keep Austin weird. All right, great. All right, gentlemen, thanks a lot for being with us today. I'd like to draw our attention to an article published by InfoQ back in December that talks about the AWS announcement of AWS Supply Chain, a new cloud service that improves supply chain visibility. In it, AWS CEO Adam Selipsky said, and I quote, "The last few years have highlighted the importance of supply chain resilience. From baby formula shortages to ships circling ports unable to unload, the disruptions have been widespread. Addressing supply chain issues around inventory is especially critical. Businesses need to plan for supply chain disruptions, respond rapidly to ensure the right levels of inventory are available, and keep costs manageable." So my question to the group here today is, do you agree with Selipsky? Should we be planning for continued supply chain disruptions as the norm? And if so, what should we do about it? Jack, I'd like to start with you if I could. What are your thoughts about the article, and should we be planning for continued disruptions in the supply chain?
Kevin, I would like to frame it up more relating to complexity versus disruption, because I think complexity leads to opportunity, disruption leads to stagnation and people not doing something about it. And as we know, we're facing climate changes, we're facing socioeconomic and geopolitical changes. And I think the challenge that a lot of businesses face is they don't know where to go. And they're concerned about investing in technology until they understand their current business. So I think I agree that we need to focus on an increasingly complex supply chain and look at that as an opportunity, understand where our businesses are headed, and then leverage technology to take advantage of those opportunities.
Complexity certainly adding to the disruptions and the inefficiencies and some of the confusion, perhaps. Jose, what is your take on it as a member of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe? What is your perspective?
I mean, this kind of solution, this cloud solution, is very interesting in order to have the visibility, the whole supply chains. I mean, from the suppliers to the end of the product, and as well the recyclability of this kind of products, of the goods that you are buying, that the companies are buying. So I mean, in these terms, it's very important to have all the whole company have the full vision of the projects or the buying.
All right, very good. Mahmoud, you are with PricewaterhouseCoopers. I'm curious if you have any comments on my introduction that referenced the 2023 Digital Trends in Supply Chain Survey and how it might apply to this article about supply chain disruption. Mahmoud, what are your thoughts?
Well, commenting about the article, of course, digital transformations have been hitting and kicking at an accelerating theme in the past decade, if you want to call it. However, I think the major gap in not leveraging that technology is really stopping at implementing the technology rather than reinventing the value proposition, restructuring the supply chains. Because the legacy supply chains had certain, I would say, capabilities that were built around it. And implementing the digital technology reduces technical depth, obviously, and technological depth. But however, it does not allow companies to leverage their position in order to reinvent their value proposition, restructure their supply chains to be more agile, etc. Commenting on the article, I would say definitely disruptions is something to be aware of. Resilience is is a learning from the COVID crisis, and building supply chain resilience is an absolute necessity going forward. technology does enable that, but I think it is not enough. It is also about really embedding the required strategy, required supply chain restructuring and transformations into the systems that would enable a resilient supply chain. So we cannot just go and take our old models and just add some digital tools to improve it. I believe it would not translate to the anticipated results of the investment.
Very good. All right. Now, Blaine, you are with Amazon Business. What are your thoughts about the AWS article, and do you agree that we should be planning for continued supply chain disruptions? And what should we do about it?
So although Amazon's in my job title and the article, I promise to keep this quite unbiased. But while I do think there will still be supply chain disruption, what I glean from the article is more around efficiency and, to Jack's point, complexity. The past several years have taught us a lot. And I think that our typical responses in terms of supply chain resiliency were isolated technologies, and we lack the connective tissue to put all these things together. Historically, I saw organizations be quite reactive, and they would have isolated technologies to help with pieces of this. I think what the article is communicating, what you saw from the comment from the VP at AWS Supply Chain, is we need a technology to put this together so you can have a holistic point of view. And whether it's continued supply chain disruption or it's just trying to gain operational efficiency within your supply chain and ideally profitability from that efficiency as well. I think that's what I'm most excited about. And specifically on this one, we're actually working with a restaurant customer on this exact solution right now. And the end-to-end solution that we're testing is how can we predictively tie their POS data on when they're utilizing consumables, tie it to a predictive model to have demand forecasting tied into it, and then ultimately also link in auto replenishment. So you remove the friction points from within that supply chain.
Well, that's interesting, Blaine, and it really brings us to our first talking point today, and that is using technology, say advanced analytics, for example, to identify processes and predict demand and enable proactive decision making and innovation and inventory management and so forth. So Blaine, tell us a little bit more about this use case with the restaurant. Are they adopting advanced analytics, and how is that affecting their success?
Yeah, I'll take it a step back. And so the visibility that you're referring to is the number one pain point that I hear from organizations in the United States currently. Is if you think about all the spend that's going through their procurement teams, oftentimes you see it could be upwards of 5,000 suppliers that they're having to manage with differing lead times and oftentimes also differing compliance to their brand compliance guidelines. So step one really is how can you aggregate all of this data into one place? And that's where people have come to Amazon, thinking of us more as a logistics company versus just a products company that happens to be having Prime Day. And they're coming to us saying, how can we, one, reduce some of our suppliers that we currently have, isolate that spend into a place where we can get all the necessary analytics that you're referencing, Kevin. And as an example, on every transaction that comes through Amazon Business, we capture over 103 different data points to inform you on what you could be doing to provide efficiency or cost savings. So you take the first step is how can you aggregate as much data, including the Maverick spend that could be going on to a P card in one place. That's when this next step comes in with AWS Supply Chain, is taking all of those analytics and providing a demand forecast model, ideally linking into your current existing technologies that you have to inform the appropriate decision making to occur. And then the latter point that I'm sure we'll get to more today is now thinking about auto replenishment, right? And I think that we underestimate the buyer experience and how much the buyer experience impacts the supply chain. So are they purchasing from multiple places? Is it a familiar interface that they're using to procure? And ultimately, do they have the right visibility and tracking?
Well, all right. So auto replenishment, inventory management. These are key. It really is tied to the kinds of data that we use to make those decisions. Mahmoud, what is your experience with clients with PwC in using advanced analytics and these techniques to innovate in their supply chain?
Well, advanced analytics is really an astounding tool. I recall previously, before these technologies existed, the amount of effort that was required, for example, to do a forecast and adapt demand control to the daily dynamics. Now, today, you witness that you are much more responsive. The data that, or the visibility that you can get, the criteria that you can get alerts on is just outstanding. It enables really the users, whether they are in procurement, logistics, inventory management, warehouse management, to react proactively, quite honestly, if the settings are properly set and if the data is up to date. And it really creates a difference. It creates a more visible supply chain, a more efficient supply chain for sure, and it's definitely more responsive.
Now, Jose, both Blaine and Mahmoud both mentioned the word proactive, and yet in some of the research that I did for the introduction, it seems like executives are not being proactive. It's sort of like I mentioned, it's sort of a conundrum. What's your experience in that proactive part from the C-suite? Why are we seeing sort of a lack of proactivity when it comes to supply chain innovation? Jose?
Yeah, I think one important point is as well to track the market, the trends of the market, and as well to know more about what is moving in the market and what can this affect to the supply chains, and to try with the artificial intelligence or with other analytics to put to give more information, or as much information as possible, in order to take the better decisions. In implementing machine learning in terms of demand and forecasting, in order to improve the inventory in the warehouse, and with these actions, the managers or the people, the managers can take better decisions in these points.
And Jack, as I mentioned, there's tons of technology and innovations that are available to automate processes, including supply chain operations. Why the gap between expectations and results?
Yeah, so as someone who used to run large supply chains and consumer products and still works in consulting in both healthcare and consumer products, this term advanced analytics scares executives. And
really?
And to maybe challenge my tech friends a little bit, I think some of the problem has to do with too much of a focus on the tools and not enough focus on the data. And the challenges that I've faced both as a consultant and as running these operations is it's the garbage in, garbage out problem. You know, you try to put like really sophisticated tools on a really shaky platform. And you spend a lot of money and you don't get a return on investment. If you do enough of those projects, then you get gun shy and you don't go back to it again, and then you stagnate. And so the challenges that we try to focus on is, fixing that platform. And I think, Amazon's a fantastic example of a company that's there, but they're very different than hospitals or, small craft breweries that we focused on. And the question is, how do you fix this foundation in time to utilize these very special tools?
Well, that is an interesting point, Jack, and really I'll bring this up for everyone, and please feel free to jump in anytime, you guys. What do we do about that garbage in, garbage out? And there are technologies that can help with that. I understand what you're saying, Jack. I want to get scared off with the advanced analytics or things like AI or blockchain or IoT. These can be also scary terms. But I guess moving into our second point, how do these emerging technologies like AI and blockchain and Internet of Things, how can they be used to enhance supply chain visibility, traceability, and automation? Jack, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the tool that I'm really excited about is blockchain, because
really,
for example, the challenge that we face in our supply chains due to complexity has a lot to do with transactional challenges that companies face in taking on new opportunities. And so the problem with blockchain right now is it's primarily focused on private contracts, smart contracts between two providers. And the limitations with blockchain is a lack of a public infrastructure, for example, for all of transportation to speak the same language, or for all of brewing, or any of these other fields. And then once there's that public standard in place, then there's that transactional fluidity. So that's part of the challenge, is that how do one company influence something that should be across an entire industry?
Interesting perspective. We hear a lot about blockchain. I'm not certain I always understand what I hear. Jose, what's your perspective on blockchain and things like IoT and AI being applied to the supply chain throughout Europe?
Yeah, sorry. The blockchain is a very interesting. It's a very interesting because you can track and trace all the merchandise from the supplier till the goods are arriving to the customer. And after that, well, now in Europe we have a new disposal, a new law, where you have in the future, and now you have to track and trace all the goods in order to recyclate or use in circular economy. So you have to know that good or that clothes that you have bought, for example, in China or in Bangladesh, where has been disposal. I mean, it has been thrown to the waste or has been reused. So I mean, it's a very interesting technology, and as well the IoT, for example, in pharma, that you can use this kind of technology. If, for example, a drug have to be used, have to be a code during all the supply chains. This can send you alarms, or they can send you information in case this cold chain is interrupted. So you can take decisions, or you can manage, to avoid lose the merchandise.
All right, very good. Daniel here, Daniel Bradbury, thank you for your comment. Daniel says, we have moved from blockchain is a solution in search of a problem. I'm with Kevin. It's not always sure about what we hear. Now, Mahmoud, you are Senior Manager of Supply Chain and Efficiency at PricewaterhouseCoopers. What's your take on blockchain? Will it bring the kinds of efficiencies and visibilities that we need? And if so, what do we need to do to get our head around blockchain and use it in ways that really matter?
I believe it's still premature so far in terms of implementation. However, blockchain is about integrity rather than data integrity rather than visibility. Of course, it enhances visibility, but the point of blockchain is really having the data integrity, the record that is absolutely untouched, okay, decentralized network. So this is what blockchain can give. An example from Jack's examples of the food and pharma industry, for example, GMO, genetically modified products or ingredients, and non-genetically modified products or ingredients. Today, it's a label that it has a process and procedure, I would say. However, if this was tracked and traced through Internet of Things sensors and through a ledger of blockchain, then we would absolutely be sure to categorize these products as genetically modified or non-genetically modified materials, which is very important in terms of consumers. Yeah. So I believe there's still some way to go. I think we'll see over the next 3 to 5 years an increasing acceleration of maturity on these technologies, together with also us learning how to apply them into the different aspects within the supply chain, as this is a learning curve that supply chain professionals need to go through. However, I think they create integrity. They do solve the data structures issue that Jack was talking about. And which brings back to the point that I started in the beginning, that usually you don't go and just implement these AI and digital tools directly. There is a prerequisite of a business model transformation, data architecture cleansing, et cetera, to make these technologies really fruitful and effective in implementation and really get a proper return on investment on that investment, basically, and a benefit in terms of whether operational efficiency or visibility, which translate at the end as a more flexible, adaptable, and resilient supply chain.
Now, Blaine, Amazon often leads the way with these types of innovations. I'm a fan of much of what Amazon has been doing over the years. What is Amazon's approach now to these emerging technologies like AI and blockchain and IoT, and how are they using to enhance supply chain visibility and automation?
So I think we talked about some, the first step that we discussed today was the AWS supply chain, but to zoom it out a little bit again, and even here in the conversation today, I think that the number one thing we're trying to solve for is, and maybe this is point 3, taking us to greater communication around these topics, right? There's lots of business units within inside Amazon that are talking to common customers. And I think that as these technologies are emerging, people, like we're hearing even today, are a bit confused on where this fits. And we need to engage executives and just drive greater conversation around these and let that inform our decision-making processes. So something we've done in retail, hospitality, and some of the industries I mentioned earlier is we're hosting these briefings with executives across the country to say, what is missing? How can you inform the roadmap that we have around these and bring interesting use cases? Because I think that perhaps the reason some of these are still not being adopted quite as much is not enough information, right? We're not working backwards from the customer enough and hearing the appropriate pain points to put an end-to-end solution in place. We're still kind of playing the whack-a-mole game with new technology, hoping it's going to cure a piece of the puzzle, but no one's put together a cohesive message yet around this. So I think that conversations like what we're having today across industry leaders, also conversations with our customers to better explain and understand these is critical. And that's what happened with AWS supply chain, really listening to what these customers are requiring and developing and iterating on something that can bring advanced analytics and predictive forecasting.
This is Supply Chain Talk. We are here with Blaine Eberhardt, Jack Buffington, Jose Saiz de Omeneca Manzan, and Mahmoud Abu Hajia. We are here today talking about innovation in supply chain operations. And Blaine, you had mentioned the people part of it. And fostering collaboration and partnerships is important to share insights, solve problems, reduce costs, improve efficiency, all the good stuff, ultimately meeting customer needs. What should we do about that? It's not just about the technology, it's about the people involved. So there needs to be sort of a more holistic approach to supply chain innovation that seems to me than just looking at the data and the technology. What is your suggestion for our listeners that may be struggling with that aspect of it?
So I think the suggestion and an action item that I'll jump ahead and say is like engaging more of these conversations. So I've sought out a lot of associations and board opportunities around the specific verticals I support to really just have workshop sessions and start to dive into the actual problems that are happening around supply chain, because it's beyond just I can't get diapers in time, and it's beyond that there's a chip shortage, right? It's exposing many, many more pain points that I think that we need to have just greater conversation on. It seems we're still quick on the solutioning and a little bit too slow on the collaboration. So specifically what I would recommend is engaging your customers. Something that I try and do is ensure that, hey, we don't have it all figured out. I think people look at Amazon like we might have all the answers, but the best way that we can help develop those is to ask a lot of questions, right? Yeah. And let our customers inform the roadmap versus development just on their behalf. So that would be my recommendation, is just to continue to engage, and also, drop the ego and start more collaboration conversations. I think that oftentimes we're all developing something that might be in the, similar markets. The more that industry leaders can partner together and collaborate on behalf of, and that's what we're starting across Amazon, is lots of business units, similar customer. How do we bring a cohesive conversation to that in person?
If you have a question for one of our panelists today, please feel free to enter that into the Q&A feature. We will try to get them into the flow of the show, and we'll have a few minutes here in a little bit for your questions. So please feel free to bring them up in the Q&A feature. Now, Jack, you are a practitioner of supply chain, and what is your experience in this idea of fostering collaboration? It seems to me that I might have my suppliers, sort of my first level suppliers, and they have suppliers, and then there's the nth. It just goes down the chain, and the farther down the chain to the nth supplier, if you will, the farther away I get in building those kinds of relationships. So what's your advice for our listeners that may be looking down that supply chain and working and maybe having difficulty fostering those kinds of partnerships and collaborations that matter?
Yes. So 2 points. One of them is back to the past, and one of them is forward to the future. So the past, I think our field of supply chain is fostered on really sound principles of culture relating to, Six Sigma, lean manufacturing. I'm an old manufacturing guy, so you got to expect I'm going to go back to this. Principles of how we do business. Customer centric, like Amazon talks about, patient centric, we talk about in lean healthcare, worker centric that we talk about in Toyota Production System. So these are not complicated ideas, but we seem to have lost them, and especially when we focus on technology before we focus on people. So that's a look to the past. A look to the future is geopolitics are changing in supply chains. Relationships that we've had for 20 years are breaking down and re-emerging when it comes to nearshoring, onshoring, disconnections from China, all these different things. And so my recommendation for people in supply chain is kind of similar to what Blaine was saying. Build your network across the world. Meet people like Mahmoud, who may not be living in the same place as you, because supply chains are changing so fast that these collaborative relationships will be much different in different geographies than they are today.
And Mahmoud, what about skills? I mentioned in the introduction that most executives recognize that innovation in their supply chain will require some upskilling. We also know that there is a shortage of talent in supply chain operations. So what is your take on that? What is your recommendation for organizations that may be struggling with the people parts of upskilling and indeed having qualified folks on board?
Well, that's an excellent point, Kevin. Capability building and talent retention is really a challenge for a lot of organizations these days. I mean, especially with all the talent shortages and with the quick velocity where technologies are really emerging and expanding at the speed it is having that. I believe, first of all, a solid I would say company vision helps a lot into getting the culture and the buy-in within the company. In addition to that, really investing into the talent of the company, the backbone, building a proper culture that supports the company's vision. And I think no matter how fast you go, you cannot go fast enough due to the velocity of the emerging technologies. So this is, I think, the challenge that comes up with that. However, it's really about that. In terms of also really bridging the soft skills gap. So we are only talking about technical skills. Now, collaboration is an important part to capture information risk and opportunities that help you become proactive in terms of decision making. And going back to the past and the future jargon from Jack, we have sales and operations planning processes, for example, that does that. We have supplier relationship management processes that are established within supply chains that does that. However, are we executing it, I would say, religiously, to ensure that we really capture this data points, really help us capture the risk and opportunities, and really help us in proactive decision making, in addition to the large visibility and accelerated data that we are getting. So the data alone is fantastic. However, it's really this part of capturing and collaborating upstream, downstream the supply chain, and within also the same supply chain is where really the added value can come from that, together with the data and informed decision-making process can be formed.
All right.
So capabilities in terms of technical, capabilities in terms of soft skills, communication skills, running meetings, managing suppliers, managing customers. This is also a major talent requirement going forward, I would say.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we are starting to run short of time, so I do want to get to some questions from our audience. This one from, and folks, if you have some questions for our panelists, now would be the time to bring them into the Q&A feature. We will try to get them into the remainder of the show. This one here from Daniel. Thank you, Daniel, for your question and contribution. Daniel says, fostering collaboration is all well and good, but some of us are in competition with each other, not just in supplier access. How does rising tide lifts all boats and not just cruise liners? So I guess the spirit of Daniel's question is, what about competition with each other? Anyone have a thought on Daniel's question about competition in the supply chain? Jose, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, the competition is going to be the whole time between different, between different brands, different people, and this is not going to change. You can collaborate with your supplier, as Mahmoud said, downstream, upstreams, in order to get as much information and in order to analyze this information and to take better decisions for your company. But the competition is going to get in the market, and it's going to be like that. I don't think it's going to change it in that point.
And if you allow me to elaborate on that,
Please.
Competition will always be there. It's really, are you delivering value to your customers? Are you really considering in your value offering a better value, a more efficient offering, quicker, faster, uplifted packaging, circular packaging, natural or organic ingredients, for example. So these are all aspects that even consumers are looking for today. And this is basically the winning horse, rather than looking at price wars and I would say red ocean strategies per se. It's really going to blue ocean, giving to the customers what they really want.
All right, very good. We have been speaking with Jack Buffington, Jose Saiz de Omeneka Manzan, Mahmoud Abu Hajia, and Blaine Everhart. Gentlemen, at this point, I would like to ask each of you to provide us with one quick action item that our listeners and viewers can use to take advantage of the ideas and advice today. And I'll start with you, Jack. Just 30 seconds. What's your action item for us today?
Yeah, I think in our field, we're the problem solvers. Supply chain people are the problem solvers. And I think that leads to people thinking that we need to have all the answers. But I think we succeed as leaders when we have the right questions, when we follow the right structured processes. Asking the right questions asks you to look for the data, and we've talked about that. That data is important. And so I think, things are changing so quickly. I forgot who mentioned it, Jose or Mahmoud, that we can't have all the answers all the time. But as leaders, we can ask the questions, and that's how we engage collaboration, which is one of the questions. That's how we better leverage technology. So my advice is ask more questions, have fewer answers.
And Jose, do you have an action item for us?
Yeah, the thing is, you have to have a holistic vision of the whole supply chains, and you have to little by little implementing solutions in order to improve your results in the company. I mean, you can start with some projects, and after that, growing all the supply chains and implementing new tools and new software in order to better your company and as well your results.
Thank you. And Mahmoud, 30 seconds. What's your action item for us today?
I would say building a solid talent network to start with. This is the foundation of any fostering business, to be honest. And these are the problem solvers, like Jack has said. And number two is really being open to reinventing your value proposition and your value chains. I mean, this is an opportunity of a millennium probably that we are in, where reinventing your value proposition and delivering the right value to the customer is really what is required.
Very good. Thank you, Mahmoud. And finally, Blaine, one action item for our listeners that can take advantage of the ideas and advice today.
Yeah, to kind of summarize a couple. One, I think it's just communication will be the answer. So one, asking ourselves the question, am I close enough to my internal and external customers to even observe the problems? And that the answer is no. Schedules those contact points so that you can observe the actual pain that's occurring internally and externally. Number two is be bold as you're communicating upstream with executives within your company as well. And I think that we can't accept that things have always been done this way as a response. And we do require disruption and bold action in times like this. And then lastly is diversify your network. If we're all surrounded by people that think like us, then we're probably going to only get the same things that we've been getting for decades now. But look at your current network and diversify your thoughts and seek out diverse opinions.
All right, very good. That is Blaine Eberhardt, Jack Buffington, Jose Saiz de Omeneca Manzan, and Mahmoud Abu Hajia. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today. What a great panel. Your perspectives and advice were spot on, and I really appreciate it. I hope we get a chance to talk again soon. And thank you to everyone joining us today. Join us again next time on the 19th at 1600 UK when we talk about becoming a transformative supply chain leader. Alistair will be back as host. But today it's been my sincere pleasure stepping in. I hope I'll be with you back again soon. In the meantime, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect there and check me out, Kevin Crane. And you can find my weekly audio podcast, Everyday MBA, as well. So, well, with that, that'll do it for this episode of Supply Chain Talk. I am Kevin Crane. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.